Kunja Vihari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Kundri Hari Radha Kundri Hari Rama, Hare Baladeva Mai Subhadra.
Jaya Shri Nath Ji, Jaya Balagopal, Jaya Shri Nath Ji, Jaya Jivapada.
Jaya Srinath Ji, Jaya Balagopal, Jaya Srinath Ji, Jaya Giri Govardhan.
Jaya Gaura Nitai, Jaya Gaura Nitai, Jaya Gaura Nitai, Jaya Gaura Nitai.
Jaya Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai.
Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada.
Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol.
Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol.
Jai Nam Sankirtana ki
Jai.
Shri Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Anantakoti Vaishnavrinda.
Jai.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Hare Krishna devotees. So, welcome to this continued discussion of the most nectarian Sri Chaitanya Caritamrita, where we are exploring the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the most magnanimous and most merciful of all Supreme Lord. So merciful because he is constantly delivering all of us from the well of material existence. And he is showing his mercy far and near. So we're discussing now the chapter entitled Lord Instructs Srila Rupa Goswami. This is from Madhya Lila, chapter number 19. So we'll discuss the first 100 or so verses today in summary form. So last week we discussed Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's, wrapping up pastimes in Vrindavan. The pastime at Akrura Tirtha, where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took bath in the Yamuna and had great ecstatic symptoms, reliving the sweet experience of Akrura when he saw Krishna and Balaram in the water while taking bath, and then saw Sheshanag along with Lord Narayan and all the different holy personalities assembled there. So this very auspicious place. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was also relishing. And then we discussed how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, on his way to Prayag, went into ecstasy and fainted. And these Patana soldiers had come about to that area and were accusing his associates of having robbed him And thus, we saw the very great diplomacy of Krishnadas, who very tactfully, subdued the situation. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu engaged in very nice dialogue with one of the saintly persons of this army, who was very well versed, or at least had studied the Quran, and he began to try to preach to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in personalism. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, using the Quran, preached to him about devotional service, and drawing from the own Shastra of the Quran, very skillfully preached to him and engaged him in the chanting of the holy names of Lord. And he, along with several others, became great devotees. And they actually went around preaching this message, so powerful. And we can see the rapid transformation of heart that is possible by the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And that rapid transformation of a heart is also equally possible to all of us. There is no dilution, either in time that has passed since his Leelas here, or there is no dilution in the distinction between association with name and association with vapu, or form. There's no distinction. So the mercy Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is showing over and over and over again is actually alive and well today. And Srila Prabhupada keeps reminding us of this fact by taking to the shelter of the names of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. One can access this mercy. And that's why before chanting the holy names of the Lord, we very lovingly recite this mantra, Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasri Gaura. So today, this section will discuss a little bit about Rupa Goswami, a little bit about Sanatana Goswami, and also about Vallabha. And so we'll discuss these three personalities. And time remaining, we'll discuss the last few verses of this section in which Raghupati Upadhyaya is interacting with the Supreme Lord and reciting some very beautiful verses. So based on time, we'll see if we can get to that today or not. So we'll read. I wanted to read the first verse of this, and then we'll read verse number 7 along with the purport. So verse 1, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami gives a very beautiful summary of this chapter in this verse. Before the creation of this cosmic manifestation, the Lord enlightened the heart of Lord Brahma with the details of creation and manifested the Vedic knowledge. In exactly the same way, the Lord, being anxious to revive the Vrindavan pastimes of Lord Krishna, impregnated the heart of Rupa Goswami with spiritual potency. By this potency, Srila Rupa Goswami could revive the activities of Krishna and Vrindavan, activities almost lost to memory. In this way, he spread Krishna consciousness throughout the world. So we'll read verse 7. Brahmana Vaishnava Dilatara Adana Dane Eka Choti Dana Dila Kutumba Barane. Translation. Srila Rupa Goswami divided the wealth he had brought home. He gave 50% in charity to Brahmanas and Vaishnavas and 25% to his relatives. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. This is a practical example of how one should divide his money and retire from household life. 50% of one's money should be distributed to qualified and pure devotees of the Lord. 25% may be given to family members. And 25% may be kept for personal use in case of emergency. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuram Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swaha Vandeyam Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Paritana Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Saganarta Shri Vishaka Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karna Sesno Dinabandhu Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusate Devi Paramami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindhubhye Vacha Atidanam Pavadevya Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavani Paschata Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, guys. So this chapter of instructing Srila Rupa Goswami is very, very important for us. We're going to see in the second half of this chapter some very potent instructions, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as Krishna Kaviraj Goswami is saying in the first verse. He's going to impregnate the heart of Rupa Goswami with the science of devotional service. And from that interaction here, Rupa Goswami is going to go on to write some of the most important shastras that we follow in our process of devotional service, including the nectar of devotion and nectar of instruction. So it was from this meeting that we will hear about in the coming couple weeks that knowledge was transferred from the Supreme Lord himself to Srila Rupa Goswami. And Srila Rupa Goswami is our foremost acharya coming from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He is the principal of the six Goswamis that we are following. Our Guru Parampara coming from Srila Prabhupada is through Rupa Goswami. And thus we are called Rupa Nugas. We are the followers of Rupa Goswami. So his instructions are very, very powerful. And when Srila Prabhupada was preparing to come to the West, he had many places he could stay in Vrindavan. But he stayed right at the footsteps of Rupa Goswami's Samadhi Mandir. And there he prayed intensely for the mercy of Rupa Goswami, so that he may fulfill the orders of his spiritual master, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and bring this message to all of us. So Rupa Goswami is a very important person in our Guru Parampara that we follow very dearly. And as I mentioned, we are Rupanugas, followers of Rupa Goswami. So we'll see the glorious pastimes of Rupa Goswami, both here and also again in Antya Lila. Very beautiful interaction between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Srila Rupa Goswami in Jagannath Puri. So they met at Ramakeli, they're meeting here at Dashabheda Ghat, and then they'll meet again in Jagannath Puri. So, but from here, Rupa Goswami will go to Vrindavan, and there he will unearth many of the lost places and establish the holy Dham of Sri Vrindavan, which was lost up until this point, as Krishna's Kaviraj Goswami is saying. So we are very fortunate to hear a little bit about Rupa Goswami. So in this verse 7, a very famous principle, this formula that Rupa Goswami established when he was ready to retire from household life or from his work life, how he utilized his wealth. And it's a very important formula that Srila Prabhupada quotes throughout Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and all of his different purports. He references this formula where Srila Rupa Goswami gave 50% of his wealth in charity. But not in just random charity, but to highly qualified Vaishnavas and Brahmanas. So to the pure devotees, to support the spreading of Krishna consciousness, he gave 50% of his wealth. He gave 25% of his wealth to his family. And then he kept 25% for any emergency use needs. So in this way, Srila Rupa Goswami is established. Now Rupa Goswami had extraordinary wealth because of his position in serving the Nawab Hussain Shah. He was like the finance minister. It is said he had multiple boatloads of gold coins. Imagine one boat filled with gold coins. He had multiple boats filled with gold coins. He was so wealthy due to his service. Yet, you'll see as we continue on in the coming weeks how detached he was and how austere he actually lived. So Rupa Goswami, being the finance minister of the Nawab, had a very high position in the world. Yet his goal wasn't to keep climbing the corporate ladder, wasn't to acquire more wealth, more power, more position. He was simply performing his duty and was eager to give it all up so that he could take to his real duty, his ultimate duty, which is serving Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his mission. And so the wealth of Rupa Goswami indicates something. He did his job really well. He was not whimsical in doing his work. He earned that position. It wasn't a birthright position. And he did it so extraordinarily well, he was rewarded handsomely for it. So we sometimes wonder, is it okay to take our jobs seriously, to pursue our... Of course, one should pursue their career with great sincerity. And whatever rewards come, know what to do with it. That is the key. To have knowledge of how to use the results. And that Rupa Goswami shows us here. Boatloads and boatloads of coins. How many cars we would own, how big of a house we would buy, how many first-class plane tickets we would, what we would do. But Rupa Goswami lived this most simple of lifestyle, though the means he had were extraordinary. So his wealth is due to his great work, but then he understood how to be detached. Because at Ramkeli, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu met Rupa and Sanatana Goswami, they expressed their desire to leave then and there. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, you stay back. You wait. Krishna will come and arrange a plan for you to leave. So Rupa and Sanatana Goswami said, okay. Their desire was to immediately join. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, you wait. And so they waited patiently. And now this time has come. So Rupa Goswami has seen and understood. He had sent some servants to Jagannath Puri to find out when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was leaving Puri to go to Vrindavan. And he thought he would meet him along the way of this journey. And now as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is returning from Vrindavan, they're going to meet at Prayaga. So this is a very anticipated meeting that is taking place in this chapter. So before we continue with Rupa Goswami, we see the discussion of Sanatana Goswami. And Rupa Goswami, being very intelligent, he did one thing before he distributed all his wealth. He gave 10,000 gold coins to the grocer. Now back in those days, there's no banking system. So you would keep your wealth with a merchant, and the merchant would keep your money with full honesty and integrity on account. So you deposited these coins, and you'll see that Sanatana Goswami is going to need that wealth to extract himself from the prison. And we'll see how he got into prison, how a great Goswami can be in prison. All right, well, let's discuss that. So, Sanatana Goswami, starting in verses 15, 16, he was thinking now how I can get out of my job. Rupa Goswami has already left. And now Sanatana Goswami is saying, wait a minute, I'm left behind. I want to leave also. And I should explain, Rupa and Sanatana Goswami are brothers. So they are brothers. So Sanatana Goswami is thinking that if I make the Nawab unhappy with me, then he'll be upset with me and I can be relieved of my job. So that was Sanatana Goswami's conclusion. Make my boss mad at me. That was his job. So what did he do? We see these sort of things today. So he pretended to be sick. He called in sick. How many of excuse me, boss, I can't come to work today. Sorry. So Sanatana Goswami, like that, he called in sick. He took a sick leave. And he took some time off. And so the Nawab, being very eager to have the service of Sanatana Goswami, we'll see why in a minute, he sent his own doctor. Now, how many of our bosses, when we call in sick, send their own doctor to come see us? We are not so important to our boss. But Sanatana Goswami was very important to the Nawab. So the Nawab sent his physician to see, hey, go see what is wrong with Sanatana Goswami. So many weeks have passed, and he's not returning to his duty. So what should we do? Let's get him back to work. So, of course, when the doctor went and saw, what did he see? Oh, Sanatana Goswami is not sick. He is in the assembly of so many Vaishnavas. And he is reading Srimad Bhagavatam. He is studying Srimad Bhagavatam. And so the Nawab says, what? And so the Nawab personally comes to see what has happened. So that here takes place in verse 17. But we see in the lead up to this another, corporate politics action we see today still. When Sanatana Goswami went sick, what did all his assistants do? They started jockeying for his position. They started competing. Oh, let me take his post. Right? They're always looking to topple the boss so that then they can assume that post. So as soon as Sanatana Goswami took some time off, they were all doing their works extra diligently, all trying to compete. And so Krishna Goswami says, the greedy masters of his clerical and secretarial staff performed the government duties while Sanatana personally remained at home. So they were all trying to vie for Sanatana Goswami's position and post. And we still see this active today in the corporate politics. So, what Srila Sanatana Goswami is doing is also very, very instructive to us. He says, Sri Sanatana Goswami used to discuss Srimad Bhagavatam in an assembly of 20 or 30 learned Brahmana scholars. So, Sanatana Goswami also was very learned. He had an expert job. He was basically the prime minister. He was the chief servant and the chief administrator for the Nawab. So he certainly had great knowledge. But that knowledge was not worthy of his aspiration. What he was really anxious to hear, it was Srimad Bhagavatam. And in the purport of verse 17, Srila Prabhupada speaks about the power of Srimad Bhagavatam. I just wanted to read a couple of sentences. Although Srimad Bhagavatam is counted among the Puranas, it is called the spotless Purana because it does not discuss anything material. It is liked by transcendental Vaishnava devotees. The subject matter found in Srimad Bhagavatam is meant for Paramahamsas. It is said, a Paramahamsa is one who does not live in the material world and who does not envy others. In Srimad Bhagavatam, devotional service is discussed to arouse the living entity to the transcendental position of jnana, knowledge, and vairagya, renunciation. So this Srimad Bhagavatam is awakening one to knowledge and renunciation. Material knowledge, where it can get us. Simply how to eat nicely, sleep nicely, mate nicely, and defend nicely. Nothing but some temporary happiness and otherwise suffering. But spiritual knowledge, transcendental knowledge, can awaken one to the eternal occupation. And Sanatana Goswami was eager to hear the Srimad Bhagavatam, to further inspire. Of course, he was already had strong desire to serve Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He is a pure devotee of the Lord. He is one of the Manjaris coming from the spiritual world, both him and Rupa Goswami. And but showing this mood, he took the retired life to study Srimad Bhagavatam. When we take the retired life, we think, oh, we'll go play some golf, learn how to play bridge, maybe join some social club. What new hobby I'll learn? Simply, in old age, try to pass time. That is the only objective. How to make time go quickly without being bored. Is there any other objective? If you really think back and look objectively, there's no other purpose but to simply pass time. This is not the means of retired life. Retired life means to double up, triple up our efforts in spiritual life. So Srila Sanatana Goswami studying Srimad Bhagavatam in the assembly of devotees is very, very important and instructive to us. So we've already got a sense of the importance of Sanatana Goswami. The Nawab sent his own doctor to check in on him. Then he came himself. So in the coming verses, now the Nawab explains why that he came personally to see him. He says, I am depending on you to carry out so many of my activities, but you have given up your government duties to sit here at home. And he says that becoming angry with Sanatana Goswami, the Nawab said, your elder brother is acting just like a plunderer. So now we have to explain this Nawab's statements. So Sanatana Goswami was performing his duties so well. He was so expert in ruling and managing the kingdom that the Nawab was completely free and unencumbered to go out and was constantly conquering new lands. As he said, plundering new areas. So when he was out, when the Nawab was out conquering a new land, he had no worry about what was happening back home. Why? Because Sanatana Goswami was such an expert minister, expert manager, that he was able to alleviate all the concerns. And thus the Nawab was able to fight free of any stress or concern. And thus he was very successful. And he was conquering lands after lands. So now when Sanatana Goswami said, I'm done, the Nawab's plans are ruined. He cannot go out and conquer anymore because he'll have to stay back and manage the kingdom he already has. What about getting more? And so this was very disturbing to the Nawab. But you can see again in the example of Sanatana Goswami how expertly he was performing his work. He was not doing it shabbily. He was not cutting corners. He was doing it expertly, though he was serving someone who was not so worthy of service. He still did his duty to his fullest. But while doing his duty, never lost sight of the real goal of life. Though he achieved such amazing wealth as well and power, he never became drunk by that power and position. And he always was detached, remembering him as an eternal servant of Krishna. So this is the mood that we see of Sanatana Goswami. So when Sanatana Goswami refused to work after being confronted by the Nawab. And the Nawab's plans being completely foiled. Though the Nawab calls Sanatana Goswami his younger brother, so dear. They're not actually brothers, so that may be confusing, but he's not brothers. But they're calling him in affection, like a brother. But what happens to the materialist when someone doesn't do what they want? Even their own family. Whoosh. So he throws Sanatana Goswami in jail. And says, well, if you're not going to serve me, then I'm going to imprison you. He was thinking if I imprison him, maybe he'll change his mind and come back to work. Sometimes the boss has to threaten us, right, when we're not doing our job. So, like that, the Nawab was threatening. So, Sanatana Goswami is now in jail. And we know that Rupa Goswami had left some money, which we'll see in the next chapter, the beginning of the next chapter, how Sanatana Goswami extricates himself from this jail. Actually, several years ago, my whole family and all of us, we had an opportunity to go to this jail and have darshan of this very auspicious place. Very beautiful structure it is that Sanatana Goswami was compounded in. And beautiful writings are all on the wall, and it's a nice place, for a prison at least. So now we'll shift back to Rupa Goswami. So we've heard now Sanatana Goswami is in jail, and Rupa Goswami is now making his way to Prayag to meet Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Rupa Goswami told Sanatana Goswami that in verse 33, in his letter to Sanatana Goswami, Srila Rupa Goswami wrote, "We two brothers are starting out to go see Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. You must also somehow or other get released and come meet us." So Rupa Goswami was going with their younger brother. Their younger brother was Anupam. So there were three brothers, Anupam, Rup, and Sanatana Goswami. The son of Anupam is Jiva Goswami, who we know after Rupa and Sanatana Goswami became the foremost Goswami. So he is the nephew of their youngest brother. Sanatana and Rupa Goswami are his uncle. So 3 of the 6 Goswamis, they are coming from this family. So that is Anupam. And Anupam was given, his name was actually Vallabha, but he was given the name Anupam by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So his birth name is Sri Vallabha. So now we'll discuss about Rupa Goswami, the actual meaning of Rupa Goswami. So hearing that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was going to Prayag, they came. So in text 46, we see a very nice observation of the mood and etiquette of Rupa Goswami. Seeing the Lord from a distance, the 2 brothers put 2 clumps of straw between their teeth and immediately fell down on the ground like rods, offering him obeisances. Now we see this over and over again in Chaitanya Caritamrita, that the devotees from a distance are offering their obeisances. How many times do we see this? Just in this great Panihati festival, we see Rupa Goswami, we see Raghunath Das Goswami offering his obeisances first at a distance. This distance is instructive because they are offering obeisances truly out of their humility. Because when you say distance, it means not in sight of the recipient. Sometimes we may offer our obeisances, to some personality in sight of them, out of etiquette, out of maybe even some feeling of social norm. But the Rupa and his brother, out of their natural humility, from a distance, had offered their obeisances. So it's indicative of the nature of their consciousness. This was not born out of etiquette, but it was born out of their true feeling of humility and desire to offer obeisances. And what did they do? They stood up and went down again. Stood up and fell down again. Stood up and fell down again. Just kept offering obeisances. Why? Because they were in ecstasy, ecstatically seeing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and offering obeisances. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replies, "Oh, stand up please, my dear Rupa." So very sweet exchange. And then in verse 49, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu bestows the greatest of benedictions. He says, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then said, "It is not possible to describe Krishna's mercy, for he has delivered you both from the well of material enjoyment." What is the limit of Krishna's mercy? There is no limit. But it is shown when one is delivered from the well of material enjoyment. Now, how many of us would think, when we leave behind 2 boatloads full of gold coins, a high position in the kingdom, nobody, our servants everywhere, royal luxuries, and to have all of that relieved of, how many of us would consider that a blessing of Krishna? Instead, most will go to Krishna, trying to obtain these sorts of things. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is telling us that Krishna's real mercy is when he relieves us from these material entanglements. And certainly Rupa and Sanatana Goswami are exquisite examples of doing their duty very sincerely and very expertly, but being very detached, knowing the real purpose of life, and never getting distracted by the accumulation of wealth or power for their real purpose. And thus, they were very blessed by Krishna, according to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because they became free from their material duties. And now, we're going to see they're going to live under trees, use their arms as pillows, beg for food. And that is considered the greatest of blessings, because they're fully in the service of the Supreme Lord. And how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu showed them mercy? Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu embraced the 2 brothers, and out of causeless mercy, he placed his feet on their heads. How many of us would like that kind of mercy? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu embracing and offering his lotus feet to us. What more one could want? So we can see the very high position of Rupa Goswami and how dear he was to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Srila Rupa Goswami recites a prayer that is very important for us. This is in verse 53. So this prayer, he says, this is Rupa Goswami speaking, "O munificent incarnation, you are Krishna himself, appearing as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. You have assumed the golden color of Srimati Radharani, and you are widely distributing pure love of Krishna. We offer our respectful obeisances to you." So Rupa Goswami is telling us, who is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? Krishna himself. He says, you are Krishna himself, appearing as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Rupa Goswami is giving us it. And he quotes some other nice prayers. So this is the interaction that takes place initially. Now the chapter transitions to the meeting between another great Vaishnava, this Vallabha Bhatt, and Vallabha Bhattacharya. Srila Prabhupada gives a detailed description of who he is in verse 61, so we won't discuss that in detail. But just know that this nice devotee was there. And we see something very interesting in verse 63 that I wanted to point out. In verse 63, it says, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu felt great ecstatic love when they began discussing Krishna. But the Lord checked his feelings because he felt shy before Vallabha Bhatt. Now, Vallabha Bhatt has some very nice Vaishnava qualities. But as Srila Prabhupada points out in that chapter, there was some pride that was there that led him to inability to fully surrender to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So there was some, pride there. So he was not fully surrendered. And so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, understanding the heart, doesn't look unfavorably upon Vallabha Bhatt. actually you'll see, treats them so exquisitely. But he was very careful. He did not reveal his full emotion. And so we see that he felt shy, meaning he was reserved. He was not being his full self. That Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would do only in the association of his intimate devotees. So, we also can learn that, we don't reveal our heart fully to the whole world. Right? When Rupa Goswami talks about the association in the 4th verse of Nectar of Instruction, that one reveals their heart and mind in confidence. Meaning, very carefully. So here, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we see, is withholding his ecstatic symptoms, out of just, a little bit of etiquette here. Now, Vallabha Bhatt could see, though, that these ecstatic symptoms were taking place, and thus he was very, very astonished. And so he had a great desire to be with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And when Rupa Goswami and Anupam, when they see Vallabha Bhatt, they offer their obeisances again with great humility, but from a distance. And now we see a very instructive piece of this section of the chapter. When Vallabha Bhattacharya went to approach Rupa and Anupam, they ran away. Rupa and Anupam said, "We are fallen. We are low-caste people, untouchable." And so Vallabha Bhattacharya was very surprised to see this. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, however, seeing this humility of Rupa and Anupam, was very pleased by this humility. Now, of course, Rupa Goswami is an extraordinary personality. He is not untouchable and fallen. But out of his humility, he stayed away, not thinking it appropriate to interact with the great Brahmana. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu now in verse 69. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is now in this verse using a little bit of reverse logic. He speaks something very interesting. So he's speaking about Rupa Goswami, and he says, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, "Don't touch him, for he belongs to a very low caste. You are a follower of Vedic principles and are a well-experienced performer of many sacrifices. You also belong to the aristocracy." So why he speaks this? So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu understood that there was some pride in the heart of Vallabha Bhattacharya in his position coming from aristocracy. So when Rupa Goswami ran away or moved away, that was out of his humility. But actually, his qualification was very high to meet Vallabha Bhatt. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, being so merciful, is going to reveal this to Vallabha Bhatt. But he doesn't do so directly. "Oh, you're being prideful. Oh, you're being this." No, he's very tactful. And what he says, "Yeah, don't touch them. You're a follower of Vedic principles coming from aristocracy." And in the 2 verses later, we see Vallabha Bhattacharya got the hint. So sometimes the instructions come indirectly. Sometimes that's what's needed for us, but they come indirectly. And so Vallabha Bhatta understood. He says in the next verse, Vallabha Bhattacharya could understand the hints of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That's in verse 70. And so Vallabha Bhattacharya then in verse 71 says, this is the real qualification of a person. Since these two are constantly chanting the holy names of Krishna, how can they be untouchable? On the contrary, they are most exalted. Then Vallabha Bhattacharya recites a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, verse 72. Very important verse. "My dear Lord, one who always keeps your holy name on his tongue becomes greater than an initiated Brahmana. Although he may be born in a family of dog-eaters, and may therefore by material calculation be lowest among men, he is still glorious. This is the wonderful effect of chanting the holy name of the Lord. It is therefore concluded, one who chants the holy name of the Lord should be understood to perform all kinds of austerities and great sacrifices mentioned in the Vedas. He has already taken his bath in all the holy places of pilgrimage. He has studied the Vedas, and he is actually an Arya. So, we see, what is the qualification of someone? It is their chanting of the holy name. Has nothing to do with their birth, or their caste, or the color of their skin, their gender, their intelligence, height, weight, nothing. The measure of one's qualification is the attraction to chanting the holy names of the Lord. And that's why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says in the second verse of Shikshashtakam, Durdevam, I am unfortunate. I have great misfortune. What is my misfortune? Not enough wealth? Not enough sense enjoyment? No. My misfortune? I don't have attraction for the chanting of the holy names. That is the real misfortune. But the real fortune is this attraction. So Rupa Goswami was established as a very worshipable personality and very approachable. Though out of his humility, they ran away. So one should also be very mindful, that we understand and interpret one's humility. One may present themselves in a humble position, but it does not make them necessarily in a lower position. That is actually the mood of the highest devotee. So we should be very careful how one interacts with such devotees. Otherwise, one can be bewildered. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu very tactfully and skillfully corrected Vallabha. And Vallabha Bhattacharya renders great service. So he takes Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to his house, along with Rupa Goswami and Krishnadas and Vallabha Bhattacharya. And he takes them to his house on a boat. There's a pastime in there, but we'll keep going in the interest of time. But I wanted to speak about this etiquette of hosting. So in verses 85 to 92, we see how Vallabha Bhatt very gloriously served Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And there is a Vedic etiquette of how to receive someone. So first thing that he does is he gives him a very nice seating place. Well, after arranging for his bath, then he gave him a very nice place to sit in his house. Then Vallabha Bhatt washes the feet of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and sprinkles the water on his head and that of his family, wanting to bless his family. Then he offers new cloths, some gift. It's explained, if you cannot offer some gift, you should at least offer some kind words, some glorification of the person. Then he worshipped Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with arati and different paraphernalia. Then after worshipping, he engaged Vallabha Bhattacharya to cook lunch and offer him very nice lunch. After serving him very nicely lunch, then he offered him some spices, some mint fresh, mouth freshener. After a meal, he takes some mouth freshener. And then he offered a nice place for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to take some rest. And while Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was taking some rest, what Vallabha Bhattacharya did, he began to massage the feet of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This very detailed and exquisite mood of service. How he served Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with so much love and sincerity. And so by observing this, we can see and learn this mood of how to receive and serve in our practical experience. So something very, very practical and appropriate for us. So this is, I think we'll end here. It's already 8 o'clock. But the first 100 or so verses, there's a little section on the meaning of Raghupada Upadhyaya, a great Brahmin where they engage in some questions and answers. So you can read those verses. They're very, very sweet, understanding who is the Supreme Lord, and what are some of the highest rasas and different things like that are discussed. But in the interest of time, we'll conclude here and see if we have any discussion or comments or questions. Srila Prabhupada ki, Jayanta Koti Vaishnavinda. Hare Krishna. Any comments or questions, discussions? Yes.
Hare Krishna. Prabhu, I heard Chaitanya Caritamrita is like a PhD in spiritual study, compared to Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. Is it due to its rich philosophy or due to any other reason, Prabhu?
Yeah, so the Chaitanya Caritamrita is considered like the PhD level Shastra. And one reads Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita and then gravitates towards this Chaitanya Caritamrita. Chaitanya Caritamrita, it contains the essence of both Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. Because the principles and pastimes and teachings are put into a very vibrant and relatable and understandable set of pastimes that teach us not only pastimes but philosophy. And that's why it's so beautiful and instructive, because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is coming to give this Krishna prema, love of Krishna, to all of us. And so, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said that if there is a great flood and you can only save some things, save Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and Chaitanya Caritamrita. But if the flood waters start to rise, then you can step on the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, but hold Chaitanya Caritamrita over your head. Because with the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, everything else can be revived again. So, Srila Prabhupada actually, before completing the translation of Srimad Bhagavatam, finished the translation of Chaitanya Caritamrita. So we can read it. It is not necessarily that we have to read it after reading Srimad Bhagavatam. Many will race right to it. I personally read Chaitanya Caritamrita first. So sweet and so attractive, and then read Srimad Bhagavatam, reading over and over again. But so there's not necessarily that one has to read in that order, but we can understand it is the ultimate of our Gaudiya Vaishnava Shastra. Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dharana, all this. I really like this. I think when you were reading, maybe I firstly did not realize the importance of Vallabha Bhattacharya. The way the pastime that you related, that there was a tinge of pride in him, and how tactfully actually Chaitanya Mahaprabhu handled this. And to reveal it to him how exalted Rupa Goswami was. I take two questions. I'm a little bit confused. Vallabha Bhattacharya, is he the same as the Anupama Mani, the younger brother, or
No.
that is different?
No,
My
different.
first question.
Different. So yeah, they're two different persons. Yeah.
Because you initially mentioned something that Anupama Mani is also.
Anupam's birth name is Sri Vallabha.
Oh,
But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave him the name of Anupam. But that is, so there's Vallabha Bhattacharya is also, they have the same name, but they're two different people.
okay. So Vallabha Bhattacharya is also the founder of another sampradaya. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, he's one of the he's a follower of Vishnu Swami.
Okay.
Yeah, it's coming up in a future discussion. There's another interaction and discussion, and there's but presents a commentary on some verses in Srimad Bhagavatam that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then has to correct, and there is some discussion, I guess I can say, about it, and so that pastime will come up later in Chaitanya Caritamrita, not exactly here, but it's that nature is there, and Srila Prabhupada comments about it, I believe, in the purport to that verse where he gives a nice description of who Vallabha is. He gives a comment that there was at least a little bit of disagreement, if you will. We can leave it at that. But so that pastime of the pride will come up later. We'll discuss it when it comes.
I think that is the reason why we need discussion of IU, because when we are reading, personally I am not able to appreciate that much. When it comes to the discussion, I think now we can understand what we can take home from these pastimes actually. Thank you so much.
Yes.
One more question. Hare Krishna Prabhu. As a conditioned soul in this material world, which one is recommended in the following as per Acharyas? Earning wealth by spending major part of life and donating to Lord and his devotees, or spending full energy in understanding Lord's teachings and spreading the message to others, Prabhu? So,
So the question is, what is recommended by acharyas to, spend one's energy acquiring wealth and using it in the service of Krishna, or spending one's time and energy spreading this knowledge of Krishna consciousness, right? So basically, to work or to, give up work, right? That's in essence the question. Both have the right end goal, which is to serve Krishna. So this question and answer is not, there's not a universal answer. So what's right for some is not right for others. And that is where Guru comes into our life. And Guru must guide us in the specific, what is best for us. So in the early days, Srila Prabhupada's time, many disciples would come and they would immediately give up everything and join full-time in the temple. One day they were in, next day shaved heads, sleeping in the brahmacharini ashrams, and out distributing books. They renounced everything. But others would approach, and Srila Prabhupada would say no. And one famous example was George Harrison. George Harrison and the Beatles, he wanted to join the temple, give up everything. And Srila Prabhupada said, no. You have a fame that can be used in the service of Krishna. So use your fame, use your popularity to spread Krishna. If you speak of Krishna, others will listen. So he was instructed by Srila Prabhupada to remain in his professional life, but in service of Krishna. So, there is no exact, we all have different abilities, different natures, and the Guru, guides us as to what is best for, because many times we think one thing is best. We think this is best for me, but we don't really know. Just like child thinks it's best for him or her, at least in mind to him, to have ice cream every day. They're convinced it's best for me. But in their immature state, that seems logical. Similarly, in our immature state, what we may think what's best for us is to do one or the other. But that's where we need the help of guidance to know what is actually specifically for us. So it's not that one or the other. Both are very potent means to serve Krishna. Both in doing the job rendering service. Both are very potent, and we take guidance of Guru to guide us as to how best we can serve. Any other comments or questions?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam.
Right.
Devasadhan Mandir. I am very, very grateful and we are blessed to have your nectar, instructive nectar every week.
Hare Krishna.
It's really helping us by reading and understanding. So very, very grateful, Prabhuji.
Thank you for your blessings, Mataji. Dandavat pranams. Anything else?
Thank you, Rupi.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.